Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are, what coast. Most of us, I guess, are still in morning, except for our East Coast friends. But my name is David Singer. I'm honored to serve as CEO of Liore North America, and want to thank you for joining us for our program these few days, our virtual festival on the climate crisis. We are excited by everything that we're able to be learning and discussing here over these 3 days on this crucial issue. And at the same time are well aware that for many of us, our hearts, our minds, our attention is also focused right now on Israel and everything that's been unfolding over the last few days. So in that light, I want to thank you for being able to focus with us on this important issue on climate and Jewish responses to the changing environment, while also noting that our hearts are in the East right now. And we're following everything going on with deep concern and prayers for peace soon. Our session right now is going to be a really interesting panel, and I'm very excited to be able to introduce it to you. So Pathways to Net Zero and Beyond, we're going to be looking at insights from various Jewish organizations to respond to a net zero greenhouse gas emission goal set by the United Nations for 2050. So it's my honor to introduce to you Liore Milgrom-Gartner, Deputy Climate Action Director at Adamah, who is going to be really facilitating this conversation and moderating our conversation. So without further ado, Liore, it's an honor to put you in charge of this here panel at our festival this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. And I'm really honored to be moderating this panel with so many wonderful people. My name is Liore Milgrom-Gartner, she, her pronouns, and I'm based in San Francisco, California, on unceded Ohlone land. And I get to work with Adamah, for Adamah, with a climate action team that has run and is running the Jewish Climate Leadership Coalition. This initiative, which launched just about 2 years ago, was in response to the crisis, as this whole program with Limmud is called. The climate crisis is real. We are feeling the effects, and the Jewish community has a moral call to respond. What's really quite exciting is that not only do we have a moral call to respond, we have the capacity to do so. And so the Jewish Climate Leadership Coalition was born with the partnership of 20 umbrella organizations across the world, really focused though on North America. This includes, so the coalition started with a broad network that covers just about every institution in America. Small nonprofits with JPRO, all denominations, all major denominations, the Jewish Federations of North America, the JCCs, we all signed on committing to action. Since we launched about 2 years ago, over 321 organizations and counting, there are more joining every week, have joined the coalition. Joining the coalition requires, one, that the leadership commits to the fact that climate change is real, it's human induced, and that as such, we can do something about it, and commits to creating a climate action plan annually. For this, we have a structure and a form essentially to fill out, which focuses climate action in 2 areas: getting to net zero greenhouse gas emissions, which is looking at our footprint, the things that we do, and how to reduce the numbers around climate pollution. And the other is around expanding impact. What we can do beyond our walls, or if we don't have our walls, like what else we can do to impact the greater change that's needed, the societal change around climate. And so what we have, so a couple of the highlights around the coalition organizations, because we had 1 round of climate action plans in. Well over 90% of the coalition members have already reduced emissions through energy efficiency measures. Over 5 megawatts of solar have been installed. And there's a norm that's shifting, that every meal that is served within our Jewish institutions are being offered vegetarian or vegan. But these are just the tastes of what kind of actions are happening and the norms that are changing. Indeed, the Jewish community is already doing so much, and together we are really making waves. So I am so honored by the three organizations that are here and the people who are here to talk about it, representing different pieces of the coalition and the Jewish community. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to each of you to speak for a moment about, please share who you are and a little bit about the organization that you come from, and how you came to join the coalition. Alexandra, let's start with you.
Wonderful. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Alexandra Corwin, she, her pronouns, and I'm the executive director of AMUD, Jews of Color Torah Academy. Our mission is to serve Jewish people of color, multiracial Jews, and their Jewish learning and educational needs. So there aren't as many barriers in meeting their Jewish educational dreams. So important, increasingly important every day, as the latest Pew study shows that 15% of Jewish people under the age of 30 are multiracial. We do this by cultivating Jewish community and Jewish learning opportunities for Jews of color. We have over 750 JOC members all over the country, with new members every week. And we really are in a spot, being a new organization that was founded in 2019, of growth. We're at the tail end of our strategic plan for the next 3 years, and we're really hoping to grow to meet the impact and the need of serving Jews of color and their Jewish learning needs. And so, at this stage, we're really thinking about what are the values that we want to hone into as we grow as an organization, and becoming part of this coalition so rooted in Jewish values of caring for the environment. We're starting at a very early stage in integrating this work into everything that we do. So really excited to share more with you about what we're thinking about and how important it is for even earlier stage organizations to really be committed to climate action. Thank you.
And then CBI, and then Becca, will go to you.
Hi, I'm Susan Nadasinko. I'm on the board at CBI, and we are a conservative synagogue of about 425 families in Tustin, California, which is in Orange County, an hour south of LA. We started our climate journey about 2 years ago in full force. Before that, we had done some minor things, but in the past 2 years, we've really stepped up our game in partnership with Adamah. And Bob also should jump in and introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Bob Sklar. I was the founding president of CBI back in 1980, and still actively involved, as with all of our past presidents, with the exception of 2. One moved out of town, and it's a very active conservative Jewish synagogue. We started with a bike ride, which Susan organized. And from that bike ride, we installed thermostats throughout our building. There was, I believe, 36 thermostats that can be controlled by the internet and make sure that we don't have a room that's 60 degrees that we're not sitting in. This produced a small amount of savings, and in California, there was a change in what they call net metering, as far as getting money back for your overage of solar. So we jumped in with both feet into a solar project. And since our roof has air conditioners on it, we went to carports, very much similar you see in a lot of schools, and put in a carport across our main parking lot. This allowed us to put up 312 panels, and currently producing 500 kilowatts a day, or megawatt every 2 days. So it's been producing exceptionally well. We also put in 2 EV chargers to encourage EV use by our staff. We're not charging for them, and that's working very well. I guess we checked with the rabbi. It's okay to drive your EV on Shabbat and plug it in and have it charge while you're at services. So that has worked out well, and we're pretty excited. Anything else, do you think, Susan?
No, we're just at the introduction, so.
Okay.
My name is Becca Gonlevy, and I am the Farm and Sustainability Director at the Boulder Jewish Community Center, Boulder JCC, and which is in Boulder, Colorado. I'm just like distracted by the chat and wanting to. I run Milk and Honey Farm here, which is a hands-on outdoor community center for like sustainable learning and forming community around nature and the outdoors. And we are a JCC, so our bottom line is building community. And what's, I think, really special about our place is that we've been able to do a lot of sustainable actions and build community around it. And some of our sustainability actions have come from our role as a community convener in Boulder. So being able to actually do more projects because of our relationships that we have with some other big organizations in town. And we joined Adamah, I think, really like knowing that Adamah is a great national leader. And we joined the coalition at Adamah for that. And also because, it was going to give us resources to take our sustainability planning to the next step, both financially and thought, knowledge, resources.
Thanks so much. So already you have a sense of 3 organizations, unique individuals that are at different stages of their climate engagement and climate work, and are navigating the space in really meaningful ways. So with that, the first question, and Bob already gave a little bit of a taste of Congregation B'nai Israel. Can you please share one thing around your climate journey that you are proud of? And some of this session is a little bit of learning, not just about the exciting things that happen, but how it happens. Even a little nitty about whether the board of directors was brought in, or won a significant volunteer or grant opportunity. So please go ahead and tell us one thing that you're excited about around your climate action journey and how it came to be. And let's go ahead and go in the reverse order.
Great. So we, I would say 2 parts of the climate journey. One is like the actual greenhouse gas accounting. And so I'll start with that, with our main building, our main JCC building. In a way, we were very lucky because we're in a new facility that's only 7 or 8 years old. And so when that building was planned, it was planned for LEED certification. And so it is a LEED certified building. And so we're already starting off with, sort of a leg up because we were able to do that. And I think a lot of those investments that the community put in 7 years ago and continuing they're pretty good return on investment, even without all the incentives. And now we're working on the biggest project in the main facility that we're working on is putting on more solar. So right now we have 67 kilowatts of solar on the roof of our building. And we're working to put on another 278 kilowatts. And that's going to offset 80% of our energy use. And one of the ways we got there in a few different ways. One was that we already had some solar put in by a great company. And so we had an individual do an analysis for us of like, what would it be to, cover the roof in solar? What would that do for our organization? And then when there was a city grant that came up that we could apply for, we actually already had that analysis and were able to get 50% of the funding to put on the solar array. And I think one of the reasons why the grant application was so enticing for the city to help us do that solar is because of the major role that we play in the community as a community convener. So we have 40,000 people who walk through our doors every year, and it's not for our own, it's somewhat for our own programs, but also because we're actually a premier rental space in Boulder. And so we're both like, we host community programs. We host one of the big Martin Luther King programs in the city every year. So we have that, role to play in the community, and we host other people's fundraisers and meetings. And so we're really like a big, we've become a very like important place to be. And so both preparing, and having that analysis, and then also really prioritizing organizational and individual connections, I think really helped us, both of those aspects helped us like fund that project. So that feels like a big, since we're only going to share one thing, I can stop there. Even though I have a lot, we have other things that I'm also very excited about.
Thank you, Becca. And a note that our goal is to have some time for Q&A at the end. So you can feel free to put some questions into the chat or hold it to the end. We should have some time to answer direct questions. Susan.
The most exciting thing for me was our partnership with Adamah and all the community involvement and enthusiasm. We did the environmental bike ride with Adamah, which led to 2 grants in the community. We saw how impactful that was. And then through a partnership with Jewish Community Foundation Orange County, the Adamah's OC Orange County Climate Action Fund was launched, and our synagogue, Congregation B'nai Israel in Tustin, was able to apply for a $36,000 grant for solar from Adamah, as well as a $100,000 no interest loan from Adamah for solar. So that was incredible in kickstarting the project, because when we went to our board, the fact that they heard about the grant opportunity, the loan opportunity, plus we had donors lined up, and federal rebates through the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as getting it done to qualify for California's net metering 2.0, which would be favorable rates for when you sell back energy to the grid. It just made the project feasible. And it was so excited when we went to our board in January of 2023, when we talked about all these incentives. Every board member who did not already have solar, virtually all of them went out and got solar personally, because they saw the incentives were incredible and the case was so compelling. So many people in our congregation told their friends, their neighbors, their relatives, other congregants, and we had a critical mass of people rushing to get solar because they saw the shul was getting solar, and that we had experts within the shul to advise people on how to do this. And the donations started flowing in. We've had about 95 donors, big and small, to the project so far, which is incredibly exciting for us, that it had such resonance with people, new members, veteran members, people of all stages of their life. And it just was something that brought our community together.
And can I add one thing? We didn't go to the board first. We went to the finance committee first and made sure that the finances would work, because that's half of the battle. Because I can't think of a single board that would say, oh, sure, I want to spend $400,000, because we don't have the money. Well, we made sure that the board understood we did have the money between donors, Adamah, and the way it was set up with the net metering. The case was much more compelling than trying to get out and say, okay, we're going to put ourselves in debt. The whole idea is we're going to have this paid off within 2 to 3 years, as opposed to most solar is 7 to 10 years. That made a big difference when we went to the board.
I'll start by saying proud that we said yes, and I'll expand on that. We joined a few weeks ago, and I think so many of us might know that at a beginning of an organization, we're only 5 years old, is that every day there are so many decisions with our capacity and the way we want to grow and where we spend our time, and so many moving pieces, being a Jewish social entrepreneur for Jewish life. And where do we spend our time? What's the strategic decision making? I think there are so many things that it's easy to say, if it's not urgent, then we'll wait tomorrow. We'll push it off. We'll join when we grow or when we get bigger. It's not a priority right now. It's not the right time. And to that, I think it's analogous, our approach at A Mood for why we joined at this earlier stage of growth to our Jewish text in Pirkei Avot. One of my favorite lines in there, it says, don't say you're going to study Torah when you have the free time, because you might never have the free time. And to me, that's analogous to us saying yes now at these very beginning stages, because, you know, it's so important to start something that's important and values aligned right away, even if it's just little steps and an orientation. It's a really hard thing to do. And so I'm really proud that we're joining, that our board said, yes, this is a priority. This is a mitzvah. We want A Mood to grow so much in the next 3 years, and the support of Adamah now and in the future for every thread as we have our visions for growth and our bold goals is going to make such a big difference. So excited to be at the beginning of this journey and proud of saying yes at this phase of our organizational life.
Thank you for showing each of you the breadth of engagement and the importance of getting started. So on to the next question. This just in from a webinar that from Project Drawdown, a fabulous non-faith-based climate organization. It turns out that the U.S. emissions are indeed falling. Climate emissions are indeed falling in just about all sectors: electricity, industry, buildings, transportation. But our food systems emissions are still climbing rapidly. And interestingly, this trend is actually true for countries all across the world. In fact, we are seeing progress around, so that means like across all of climate change emissions, but in the food sector, where food comes from, how it's grown, and how it's disposed of, if it's disposed of at all, is indeed, right, those climate emissions are rising. So with that, curious, within each of your organizations, are there norms or procedures that you have in place to reduce the emissions associated with food? And the secondary part, if you have, like, how has the community responded? That guy, I see you're off mute. So let's start. Maybe we'll do the same order.
Great. So I'm the, one of my major roles is the farm director. So food is like obviously a very important frame that I use with my everyday life. And it's interesting. So we have, as you said in that question, there are so many different aspects of where emissions come from in the food system. And I think I'll talk first about the aspects that I'm really excited about, and then I'll talk about the challenges that we're still having. Boulder, the city of Boulder has municipal composting.
I think that is a frozen Becca on a very exciting piece around municipal composting, which is a tremendous. Oh, are you back, Becca?
Oh, there I am.
Great.
Okay.
3 cheers for municipal composting. That's where you left off.
Right. Here's the thing is it all goes to a central facility. The whole Front Range's composting basically goes to a central facility, and they had way too much contamination. And so we're no longer allowed to use compostable one-time use products. So like compostable cups, compostable plates, those are not compostable in our municipal system. And so when that changed, many people in our organization were sort of like, but what now? We're just going to be throwing things out, when we serve food. And so we were actually able to, the big thing that we did was we have a whole set of reusable cups for the organization, because serving water and drinks and tea is one of the number one food, like ways that we use a dish at the organization. And so now we have our own cups and we do dishes. And so that actually felt like a big win. And it paid for itself. First of all, we got a grant from the city to cover, I think, a third or a half of the cups, but they paid for themselves without thinking about electricity or water use, but just with compostable cups versus the reusable cups in 1 year. Because compostable cups anyways cost a lot of money. So that was exciting. We also have bulk snacks for staff. So we feed like ourselves. We have an oatmeal bar, we have nuts, we have trail mix, and none of that comes from a single-use package anymore. And so that also felt like a big win, which the impacts of these decisions aren't, I don't know the actual like greenhouse gas, saved or like not emitted, the offset, but it feels impactful because it's like sort of the way that we're doing things in the community center, right? And so we're impacting like everyone who's doing it those ways, and maybe being able to change behavior outside of just when you're here. We also now actually have on-site composting. So we, with that issue of the waste traveling 50 miles away, the organic waste, one of the local nonprofits, it's a zero waste nonprofit in town, helped us put in a really awesome aerated static pile composting system where, because we're such an outward facing farm, they wanted sort of this, they helped a few farms to implement this system. And so we're now actually collecting food waste from the building and from the synagogue across the way, and from any staff or volunteers that want to come bring their food waste, wasted food and kitchen scraps. And so that feels like a really big win also. That's almost all on like the waste side of things. I'll say that the consumption side has been harder. We always, because I think of the culture in Boulder, Colorado, there are vegan options at every meal that, an internal program. And I haven't been able to get a shift of like, well, we could, if there's like a big donor event, like having the plant, the default plant-based, that I think I saw Melissa Hoffman on this call, like that, she taught me about this, that like, instead of saying like, tell us if you need a vegetarian meal, saying like the menu will be vegetarian or vegan, please let us know if you would like the animal protein option. Because I think that would be a big win if we could shift our policy that way, and we haven't been able to. People are still resistant to that one.
I'd be happy to share.
Thank you.
Connected to that, so we're excited to be building chapters for JOC Torah learning across the country, and just to integrate these different ideas that you shared, Becca, is exciting in the planning stage. And, as a personal anecdote, as it's so connected to what you just shared, Becca, is that I'm a vegan. I've been a vegan for a long time. This is vegan leather. And usually when I go into any eating space, I either eat before or I acknowledge that I'm going to have to be a little bit perceived maybe as a burden or difficult, and asking a lot of questions about, is this vegan? Can I eat this? And there was a Jewish fellowship that I was a part of several years ago with Avodah. And I remember the program director of that fellowship shared something that really made me not feel like a burden for this in this public setting with the other fellows, and shared, listen, all of our meals are by default vegan. And that's not only to make sure that everyone can eat, and Alexandra can eat, and we're all here, but also like let's give kudos and energy for Alexandra for being vegan and doing a mitzvah that has a big impact on the environment, right? And that was a moment where I felt very held in a positive way for being vegan, and it really makes me think of the values of Jewish hospitality, and what could it look like if we had spaces and food spaces where everyone could eat. It was kosher, it was vegan, and that being part of our sustainability practice, also connected to this radical hospitality, is a really exciting connection that puts together both our Jewish values.
Thank you. And let's close out with Congregation B'nai Israel. Bob, if you
you're
can.
taking this one.
What we've tried to do is similar to what you were discussing with the JCC is we do have a dishwasher. We're not using it. We want to try to eliminate any of the paper waste that we have that's just all disposable, and bring in cups, glasses, plates, silverware that can be washed. That project is probably going to be later on this year. Fortunately, we have someone who's in that business that we can probably get the utensils and everything at a reasonable cost, if not donated. But that'll be a paradigm shift for people, because then they're going to have to learn how to scrape plates, and we can obviously handle any food waste. Our goal on that is to get that done within the next year. We have a lighting project that's in front of it, where we're going to, we've converted a lot of LED lights, but we're going now after lights that you don't think about, the ones in the classrooms, the fluorescents and things like that. So we're lining our projects up so that we'll have a continual basis of trying to reduce our carbon footprint.
Thank you. And I want to stick with this question for a bit longer, because the answers were all so interesting. And we talked a little bit about some of the challenges. Becca, you said they have a goal of shifting the norm to plant and having people opt in to meat. Alexandra, you talked about kind of just as an organization now, you're only doing, and I'm not sure, vegan or vegetarian. And so as you're working on this, we're Jewish in this space, and you know that if we were in person, there would be food, right? That's the way we work as a community. So as we think about like this not insignificant bucket, it's almost globally, it's about a third of climate pollution is coming from the food production and food waste. I would love to kind of hear a little bit more about how, especially Alexandra, from you, like how is it within your community and your programming that there isn't meat? Are people noticing? Is it a conversation? If you can jump into that for a second, and then maybe we'll spend another moment here. But Alexandra, if you could answer that, how your food norms are being perceived by others.
I would say that for the programs that we've had in person over the past couple of years, it has not come up as something that anyone's pushed back upon. I think we try really hard. Our whole point of our organization is to create a welcoming space where people can bring their full selves, and it's at the core of everything that we do. And so, but a new addition now, we just defaulted in that in general for a lot of reasons. But now we can say that, hey, we're part of Adamah, and this is a broader story and a movement that we're part of for the Jewish Climate Coalition. And so excited to see what seeds and conversations that plants when we share the reason and a new reason and rationale behind our food choices and what we do.
I want to add that I actually think some of it is around making sure that you actually have really good vegetarian and vegan chefs and caterers. And I think one of the pushbacks at the JCC is that there's one small catering operation that does it really well and the others don't yet. And like, so that sort of bigger institutional, like these things that we have to rely on. And I'm also the green team chair at my synagogue, and we were going super vegan, like in that direction. And when the hospitality chair stopped being able to cook as many meals, and she's a vegan and cooked really delicious food, and we were relying on an outside caterer, people started getting pretty upset about the vegan options and like asked for non-vegan options again. So just that as being, if it's like delicious, and people like are like, oh, I'm not missing anything. But if like people don't actually know how to do it, then I think it becomes a bigger issue.
That's such an interesting observation, Becca. And I think like part of when in this whole conversation, much of the time when I refer to the climate action, I'm really talking about the journey around climate action. And then it's that, and if you look at the climate action plans that organizations have submitted, there may be dozens of questions, but it's all about where you are in the process, because we are all in process. And indeed, when we ask organizations about where they are in the food journey, one of the options for engagement is asking local caterers to explore vegan and vegetarian options, but you can only offer as much as is available to you. And similarly, it even actually relates to clean electricity, that you only, like, if you tap into the grid, like, you can only get what is available. And so what does it mean to try to find better options and changing the world at large? Susan or Bob, do you want to talk anything more about how the community is responding to the food options available within the synagogue setting?
Yeah, I just want to mention one thing. Part of our climate journey is our whole community's journey. 10 organizations in OC Orange County, California, have signed up for the Climate Coalition. One that had a very big impact in the food space was our local JCC in Irvine, California. They were the host of our Adamah bike ride. It was the venue, and their grant from the bike ride involved recycling and composting. So they have the preschoolers planting their organic garden and literally composting with this, plastic drum device that they spin, and then they grow their vegetables, they save the scraps, they compost the scraps, and then the JCC got inspired and just said to the kosher caterer on site, please do not deliver food in styrofoam packaging to the preschool for their snacks and lunches. We know it costs more to have compostable packaging, but please just do it. So we were really excited, that they got inspired by the recycling and composting grant to want to make changes in the packaging. And when we held a Adamah lunch at the JCC for all the clergy in our community and executive directors of nonprofits and people from the synagogues, the JCC worked with me. The caterer normally serves just plastic bottles of water. I said, we can't do that. We need pitchers of water, so that gets rid of the plastic. And they did that, and they provided compostable plates just for our event. They don't do that normally, but they knew it was very important because it was an Adamah event. So it takes a lot of working with the caterers and the providers to implement change, so that it will become more of the norm over time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One additional thing is there are some people that are gluten, and so need to be gluten free, and that's a good place to start, is have gluten free options and then move into going vegetarian. We don't serve any meat products, so we're strictly, pastas and things like that. So we're almost to a situation that we can eliminate those types of products for food use. It's a shift from an older concept that we have to be eating a lot of meat and potatoes, and that hopefully society has helped change that. But it's still the same way in a synagogue. We have to take them baby steps at a time. We now have gluten-free available at every meal, as well as when, say, a bar bat mitzvah is catered, we make a point of that. So there are different things you can do to move people in that direction.
Thank you. And if you notice, we're not talking very much about percentages and emissions, numbers, but the subtle implication here is that the most significant impact around food choices is on the what. So meat is indeed, from the way that it's grown and the amount of energy it needs to be raised and brought to our plates is one of the most significant contributors to climate change. And so the shift to vegetarian and vegan is an enormous reduction on emissions. So that was implied, and I realize it may have been important to say specifically. So a bit more about the Jewish Climate Leadership Coalition. All of these conversations like really beautifully talk about reducing emissions within our operations, within our buildings, and that is so important. So that falls into the getting to net zero greenhouse gas emissions. We then have a whole other area of impact around climate change, which we within the coalition called expanding impact. And that's, as I reference, expanding impact beyond our own footprint. And you all have spoken elegantly and meaningfully around the emissions reductions. If we can shift now a little bit to this component around expanding impact, and specifically, I'm curious around messaging. As I've been known to say, and some of you may have shared a space with me, that if we, the Jewish community, have completely decarbonized, so it completely gotten our emissions to zero, but nobody knows, did we meet our goal? So with that, if you can think for a moment about where your organization is in your climate journey, and how you're telling your climate story within the organization, within your community. It's been referenced, but if we can just talk about messaging and the ripple effect across community. Susan, let's start with you.
The most exciting thing we did was we had a solar ribbon cutting ceremony back in October. Liore was one of our speakers. We had over 100 participants, including the religious school kids, who joined our adult chauffeur blowers in blowing chauffeur under the carports at the end of the ceremony. And that was really the most meaningful moment, to have the whole community there blowing chauffeur together. Great photo opportunity. The ceremony was a half an hour to keep it short and sweet, but we had all these Jewish elements that made it special. We had Hatikva, we had Shehechianu, we had the rabbi giving a Dvar Torah about, Ledor Vador, generation to generation of, and the mitzvah of preserving the earth for future generations. We had the cantor singing "Here Comes the Sun" in Hebrew. We talked a little bit about the process, the donations, the climate coalition, Adamah's help, thanking everybody. And it was really lovely, and it brought the community together. We also published 3 articles in our local e-Jewish publication about all the grants from the OC Climate Fund and the National Loan Fund, because so far 4 organizations in Orange County, California have partaken, so get more publicity out there. And then just last weekend was a very exciting thing at our local JCC. They were doing a arts festival and a Tzedakah festival, and Adamah was a participant. So Adamah had a kiosk there with our local Jewish Youth Climate Movement staffer, and she had everybody planting parsley and taking home seed packets. And one of the Tzedakah boxes had a nature theme. These Tzedakah boxes were the size of a life-size walk-in phone booth, if you remember those, from when we used to have them on every street corner in big cities. So that was great publicity. And we're going to have a Sukkot festival for all of Orange County in the fall at a regenerative agriculture farm, and Adamah will have a presence there as well. So we're trying very hard to get the word out in the broader community.
Just to add one more thing, Susan mentioned it briefly, but when we first started on the solar project, the board, probably 50% already had solar, but at least another 30% to 40% went ahead and got solar. So by setting the example and letting people know that this is, it's important to have this, it had a ripple effect where people still come up to me and talk about getting solar and what it takes and what's involved in doing the process. So it's the type of thing where that seems to have the largest impact with respect to cutting down on use of the grid. But that has made a big difference in just the congregants and the boards and everybody that's involved.
And just to add, now that our solar has been up and running since March 20th, we see on the app our daily stats. So earlier today, Bob just told us we're at the equivalent of planting 125 trees. So we're frequently letting the congregation know in our weekly e-blasts what our production is, what our emission savings are, and the equivalent of trees planted, because people can get their arms around trees planted rather than megawatts and kilowatts. So we're trying to keep the message going of what we're doing is making a real difference.
Wow, so many different ways of engaging community and telling the story. Alexandra.
So a big part of what our mission is and what we do and we'll grow to do is supporting Jews of color in bringing their full selves to Torah. And the type of Torah that happens when someone is able to just relax their shoulders, feel really comfortable, and connect all parts of their identity and their thinking to the Torah in front of them, really exciting Torah comes out. There was a class before we joined Adamah, led by Dr. Kara Judea Al-Hadeth, and it was called Hospitality as an Antidote to Environmental Racism and Climate Chaos. And in that class, it connected rabbinic ethics rooted in empathy to cultivate a profound sense of individual agency and explore creative responsibility for spiritual justice connected back to how do we make the environment, how do we put that at the corner of our values. So I say this to say I'm really excited at the connection between being part of the Jewish climate movement, being part of Adamah, and how this will inspire Jewish Torah thought leadership that then will have so many seeds. And it's an exciting thing to think about because, you know, there were points where I first learned about Adamah and I'm like, well, we don't have a building. Is it right for us? We work in virtual offices across the country. Will this make a tangible impact? And what I love so much about Adamah's model is that the thought leadership, the having community members connect with nature and think more about it is another entry point in being a part of this movement and this coalition. So really excited to continue telling our story with the intersection of Torah, the environment, racism, and bringing our full selves to Torah and values-based thinking. So that's what we're excited about.
Beautiful, thank you. And Becca.
When I was trying to brainstorm this question, I was like, I think we need to do a better job of storytelling. I mean, we've got like our so every year now in April, it's sort of now a tradition for the community-wide email, like which is a message from the director, to be on farm and sustainability, which is a really sweet, it's a sweet time of year with Earth Day and Passover and like our growing season starting. And I think that in that place is where we've been actually like taking accounting of the year and like what we've been doing. You know, and then other than that, you know, we do some things on social media. I think our signage could be much better. As I said earlier, there are 40,000 people that walk in and out of the building. I think we could have, you know, once we put all the solar on our roof, like we need some good signage about it. What we do really well is the education piece, especially among youth, with our farm and being able to give people hands-on experience with different aspects of sustainable living and choices, and also just really cultivating that love of nature so that we, you know, are growing a generation of people for whom the earth is important.
Thank you. And you start with the individual, you can ripple out to the community, and these changes, big and small, really add up to a story. And part of the, I think, kind of the opportunity of the coalition and spaces like this is one-offs are invaluable and critically important. But what's happening here with these three organizations and the hundreds of others is the story now of the Jewish community responding. We knew there for decades, and as this Mood conference is really in memory of Ellen Bernstein, right? For decades, there has been work around the environment and climate, and theologically and intellectually, and now the actions that are happening in any one organization are now being collected. And there was an incredible story of action and engagement and change that is indeed happening. But it's not always roses and ribbon cuttings. There are challenges. There are challenges that are real. There are challenges that we overcome. And there are challenges that we're kind of still stuck in and working through. I so appreciate that you each have been honest throughout this whole thing, actually, about some of the challenges that you're facing and some that are that you are still a little stuck on. But if we can speak for a moment to some of the hurdles that you faced and how you overcame it. And also, if there is a challenge that you're still working through, this is a really lovely space to share, because kind of there is Torah Lishma, there is learning and sharing for the sake of learning, and we also love action. So all of you are invited to engage with the coalition, to engage in climate action. And so these stories of how you are doing and how you are getting stuck and how you are passing, how you are achieving these goals, like this is a great space to share so that we can all identify and connect to and see ourselves in the work that you are doing. Susan, let's start with you about hurdles.
We had some hurdles with solar that we've gotten through because obviously we're up and running. One category of hurdles was vendor delays and delays with the city inspection process. So it took a lot of patience, a lot of perseverance. Bob was amazing. He was there on site every day that the vendors were there. Some days he was there 12 or 15 hours with the vendors with the hard hat and, you know, the bright colored vest and the work boots, because I advise anyone who is doing a solar installation to have some trusted volunteer or staff member micromanage the process so you'll get the results you want. It's just too involved, too expensive, too technical that you really want to have your trusted volunteer or staff person there overseeing every aspect of it when a vendor is on site. So we got through those hurdles. We got through the internal politics and fundraising hurdles. One of our issues was we had a competing fundraising project going on at the synagogue, and we had to put our solar fundraising on hold until that process had been completed. So finally, we didn't get the go ahead to fundraise until the equipment was literally starting to go up in August of 2023, because it was getting very uncomfortable at that point. How do we not tell congregants that our back parking lot is going to be a construction site? Inquiring minds want to know. So then we were able to go public with some appeals. One of the challenge we're going through right now is that we're one of the first organizations nonprofits to be applying for a direct pay back from the federal government for 30% of the cost of our solar installation. So we have a congregant who's an expert on federal grants. Adamah is also partnering with us and another faith-based organization to figure out how do we apply to get this rebate and get a check back for 30%. So that's what we're going through now. But we've been able to meet every challenge as it came up. The initial challenge, I would say, was figuring out what did we need: rooftop versus a carport for the solar installation. Where do we place it? How do we vet vendors? How do we negotiate a contract? What do we look for? And we were very grateful. Adamah had a lot of solar expertise and connected us with other experts so that we felt good about our due diligence process, felt good about our contract, knew the best options for us. It was a lot of research up front, but it all paid off, because right now we're producing way more solar than we're using. Of course, it's only March. We don't have the air conditioning running 24/7, but we picked, the optimal system. So we feel like we're going to be able to meet all of our electrical needs and save $1.5 million over the life of the system, $1.5 million in electric fees. So that's just incredible right there.
Just to add one more block is, as you're doing projects like this, we had times where we had to turn off power. And when you have a synagogue that's running 24/7, that's next to impossible. So sometimes we were Sunday afternoon after Sunday school from noon or 12:30 until 7, 8 o'clock at night with the power off to be able to do all the connections. That was a stumbling block that had to be solved. There's the rabbi teaches a conversion class, so they had to do it out on the patio. We had to put lanterns in the bathrooms so people could use the internal bathrooms. And then another problem is we have a summer camp. And obviously I can't have a construction zone with a bunch of kids running around. So we had to delay a lot of the work until summer camp was over. So there's all sorts of logistics that occur that you don't necessarily think about in advance, but you do have to work on and plan around, which delay your projects. And then the final thing is where we stand with the government right now is our application is in. It's actually being looked at as we speak, and we've gotten a number back. So we have a number applied to our application. And it looks like we're going to be one of the first organizations to get money back from the government. It takes about 90 days to do that, but we're in the queue. So hopefully we'll be able to report in about 90 days we got our money back from them.
My first thought is thinking of the logistics of scaling for in-person programming and using compostable plates and bringing those different places. And I think back to when I was a Jewish educator and teaching Sunday school. I started, and to feed the kids for snack time, they were disposable plates and napkins and forks, and that was easier and it wasn't on my mind as much. But after teaching a class to the kids on Jewish values and the environment, a few of the kids, I think second graders at the time, came up to me and be like, why are we doing this? Why don't we have reusable plates and cups and forks? And I remember thinking, wow, amazing. Okay, that's amazing. You kids are amazing. Let's just all pitch in together then. And then I went out and I bought plates and I bought things that we could wash after and then bring back every time. And we all did it together. So it's really thinking through the logistics of how to scale a program and making sure that that's a core component and doing it all together. And what will that look like? We're gonna figure that out. But exciting to be in this movement and partnership to get advice from each of you of how you've done it in the past.
I think our major challenge that we're working through right now is it's like two things together. One is what do we do next? And then part of it is that I think that we should focus on the grounds. And we have an organic farm, but that's only one section of the property, and the other property is taken care of by like a conventional landscaping company. That rely on fertilizers and pesticides and mulch from, bark mulch that's like imported in, and taking out any wood chips and, just sort of focus the natural climate solutions that we can do on our own property, which are both, they both mitigate and, capture carbon and also help adapt when we do have wildfires or floods. Or drought, which are things that we've been hit with in the last 15 years here. So yes, but it's an interesting challenge because those things aren't very quantifiable. And on top of that, in Boulder County, there don't seem to be landscaping professionals that take care of a really large property who do know how to like do soil management on a sustainable soil management on a large scale. So we're working like with the city's natural climate solutions department to continue to brainstorm how they can help build that capacity in the area. And also though, like, we don't really like, is that the next thing we should work on? And so we just got approved and like matched with students at the University of Colorado's Masters of Environment program for their capstone project. They're actually gonna write us a climate action plan. So sort of their intuition is also like, you guys probably need to, you have 9 acres, like think about this like natural climate solutions piece. But before doing that, trying to really do a proper climate action plan to like be able to show leadership and et cetera, that like this is the next thing that we should be working with.
Thank you so much. And we're gonna wrap up with this and have some time for Q&A. So get some of your burning questions written down, or prepared to take yourself off mute and chime in. But what I appreciate so much about that closing, Becca and Fred, I see your question reflection in the chat as well about interfaith power and light. About there's so many resources available to all of us to do this work. There are climate solutions out there. There are indeed hurdles, but we know we are not the only ones thinking about this. We're not the only ones taking action, whether it's with government organizations in our community or the JCC Association and that collection, or the synagogues, or what is now the Jewish Climate Leadership Coalition, and all of us who are doing this work. We know we are not alone. There are solutions at hand, and we're stepping in, and we are doing this work. So thank you to you, all of the panelists, Alexandra and Susan and Becca and Bob, for being here, for Linud for hosting, and I already see some questions in the chat. So Brian, and then Richard.
Hi, I put this in the chat, but I want to put a plug in that our federation divested its investments from fossil fuels and was one of the first to do so. So it can be done. It was pretty straightforward, at least I thought it was. You basically have to meet with the decision makers and tell them what fossil fuels are all about. Most of them knew the impacts, so it was pretty much a unanimous decision, just had to go through the process. So I would strongly encourage, if you want to look externally as well as internally, to deeply consider looking at where your money's invested and divesting it from fossil fuels. It makes a big impact on many levels. And my next step was to hope for more of a national effort in this. So maybe this is our first step as we start to push it nationally. So, and thank you, Liore, for putting that statement in there.
Yes, it is a tremendous accomplishment, Brian. Thank you so much for making sure it got elevated. And in this work, in this climate journey work that each of us is on, there are so many ways to get started, so many steps to take, and leaning in where you can is incredible. So this is one example of the 2 Oregon federations taking really meaningful action, especially as doing it as the first. Thank you so much. Brian, Richard.
Hi, thanks very much. I know some of you know my wife, Mirla Goldsmith, who along with Devora are the co-founders of the Jewish Earth Alliance. I think therefore you won't be surprised at my question. And that is that these are great stories and terrific. And the fact is that in a world which is used to saying no to be able to demonstrate that there are yeses is really a very important statement for the Jewish world in particular and the world in general. And I think that's terrific. But one of the things that I know from my own work, and I think I've witnessed, is that it doesn't take long to recognize that the strategic on the local level never gets to scale, and you have to move into advocacy to address the systemic. And I was just curious whether any of the organizations that are speaking today have begun talking about how to take your very successful, impactful models and to begin to talk about how you can influence policy on the state level or on the national level, because it's not to take anything away from the successful local level, but we also know that without that scale, we're never going to accomplish what needs to be accomplished in the lifetime of our lifetime, and certainly in the lifetime of our grandchildren.
I'll answer, which, that it's an advocacy and policy is something that as a JCC, like the leadership is just not down with doing a lot of that kind of work. And we partner on a very regular basis with Colorado Jewish Climate Action, which is an advocacy organization. So, we're allowed to have them speak at different events that it makes sense, or, table or host something, but that like us as an organization we can't do that. So partners.
I think that's right. And there's two pieces to it that I'll jump in, and that every organization is jumping in where they can, and there are many who have raised being part of the Jewish Earth Alliance or Dayenu Circle or Adamah JYCM Kfutza are making movements. And there is the distinct piece that, as I shared, when the coalition got started, it was with the national umbrella organizations. And so what I see as the opportunity of the coalition is taking the individual stories of synagogues, JCCs, making sure that the parent organization is aware, and they are the biggest advocates across on behalf of the Jewish community. And so the Network of Jewish Human Service Agencies, for instance, in their climate action plan has actually named that the emergency response that they are so critical for on behalf of the Jewish community, that when they do advocacy in DC, they are naming that the climate crisis is making their work harder. And that in order for them to be able to serve people and those most in need across America, we need to address the climate crisis. And the other piece, which we're just getting started on, as we think about all of right now, there's incredible federal movement and federal money going into climate work. No one in this room, I'm sure, is surprised that the first synagogue within the coalition to install solar, to be accessing the direct pay rebates from the Inflation Reduction Act, is in California. Right? It's not in many other states. And so we as a coalition get to say, well, why was it easier in California to access federal money? Why in this state is it harder? Why did this synagogue decarbonize easily and this one is having trouble changing their light bulbs? So this storytelling that we are just now getting access to of the work that's happening on the ground, because policy is only going to be policy. Like, it's implementing that is where we're at, and the stories that and the challenges and the opportunities that we're dealing with. How do we take that and elevate that to our elected officials? So that's the work at hand that Adamah gets to play in a partnership with the individual organizations in the coalition and in the parent ones, and really critically, our advocate partners, organizational partners. We're almost at time. Melissa put a question in the chat around food-related emissions. And then Myrtle, I don't know if you still had a question. So To that question, Melissa, we across the board actually aren't requiring organizations to measure emissions. We are supporting organizations in fully decarbonizing, and there are ways to indeed measure that we offer the resources to. Becky O'Brien is our Director of Food and Climate, who holds all of that. And we have, for all of our climate solutions, just about, there are resource guides. We really invite everyone to join the coalition, and that's where our resource guides are available. Actually, our first, we offer resources such as workshops and seminars. In our very first deep dive, it's going to be a 4-session deep dive, is going to be around food sourcing and the food we serve. And so there will be, we have a couple partners around, specifically around food related emissions. And so that's where most of those resources are going to be walked through, but it's all available on our, for coalition members. I'm sorry that I don't have the names at the tip of my tongue. Myrtle.
Yes, 2 comments. The first thing is, thank you, Fred Scholler. You put something in a chat about your local IPL. If you don't know about a local IPL, please go to the trouble to look it up. You go to ipl.org, Interfaith Power and Light, and I think they have chapters in 48 of the different states and territories, because that is where advocacy can take place, and that's where you can have access to what is necessary to advocate for. I'm in Georgia, and in spite of 2 Democratic senators, we're still a pretty conservative state, and yeah, we need the IPL, and they are very useful. The second thing I want to just comment about is how important it is for each of us, wherever we are, to engage the younger people in our communities with stuff that's fun. There was a session yesterday given by Rosenthal from Repair the Sea. If you haven't looked at the opportunities of doing reverse tashlich as an activity with your communities, with your teens, with your young adults, find a way to do that. Go to repairthesea.org. I think that's correct. And it's basically a way of doing a sort of river cleanup roundabout when you do tashlich, somewhere between Rosh Hashanah and the end of Sukkot. And wherever you live, you have water that is available, and people can get wet, or they can just do cleanups, and it engages people, and you'll discover people you didn't know about. Dibarti, thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope that if there is a takeaway to this, is that there is something to do. Whether you are a lone individual and you're thinking about already thinking about the new year and Tikkun Hayam and repairing the sea, you can do a reverse tashlich. If you are part of a synagogue or community, you can go check out adamah.org/coalition and see what it would look like for you to join the coalition. You serve food, you have a rooftop. There are conversations you can have, there is community work to do, and you are not alone. Really, I think that is the takeaway. You are not alone. There are so many like you who are thinking and doing and trying our best. So thank you for joining. David, I turn it back to you.
Lior and Alexandra and Becca and Bob and Susan, thank you all so much. This has been really, really interesting conversation. Thank you for all the work you are doing. Thank you for sharing it with all of us and for participating in this panel and our entire symposium. Everyone, thank you for attending this panel. Hope you're enjoying our symposium on the climate crisis, and that you continue to enjoy as we continue through day 2 today, as well as tomorrow. You have emails with information and links about all the sessions throughout the conference. And thank you for participating. Thank you again, Lior, for leading this panel and for all the work you do. Y'all have a good day.